And when I first started out, I just used paints out at pot, maybe a bit of water if it was starting to dry a bit. I don't think you're going to have a problem.
What's up guys, welcome back. Bit of a weird one today. We're doing a response video, which I don't usually do. Actually, I think this might be the first one that I've done. I tried to keep it to just the painting tutorials on the channel, but I thought I'd break the mold this one time because I think this is actually quite important to make. So Luke APS recently uploaded a video on Scale 75 paints and said he really likes them.
I really like them.
Which is awesome because I really like them too. I've used them on pretty much everything I've painted for the past few years. The problem is that I disagree with basically every reason he gives on why he likes them. Apparently he'd been looking to pick them up for a while, but he was put off because a lot of pro painters were saying,
they're very transparent, they're amazing for wet working, they're amazing for blending.
And he's more used to,
army painter, straight out of pot, smash them on, awesome. Coat of arms, pot, open a pot, smash it on, awesome.
So essentially what he's looking for in a paint, if I'm reading them correctly, is high opacity and ease of use, which to my mind puts scale colour right out the window because they're not opaque or easy to use. And I'm saying that as someone who likes them. Anyway, to cut to the chase, he bought some.
I bought some.
Told you.
And this is what I found. As you can see, straight out the pot onto this white piece of plastic card. Even the bright colours are very, very opaque, okay? Straight out the pot, this is no adding no water or anything like that. The pigment in these paints is unreal. Absolutely unreal.
Alright, so here's the first problem I have. This plastic card test is meaningless because with very few exceptions, you can't use scale colour straight out of the pot. They have to be thinned. It's not optional. Scale paints are very thick. They almost have a toothpaste-like quality to them. So if you use them straight out of the pot, you'll very quickly build up visible surface texture and it would be almost like artexing your model. The paints have no flow when they're straight out of the pot, so you wouldn't be able to get a smooth coverage. And even in this unthinned state, they're not going to dry opaque. So even straight out of the pot, you would still need multiple coats. And if you're going to be laying down multiple coats of unthinned scale colour, you may as well be painting with cement. It's going to look really bad. One of the big stumbling blocks for people who are just starting out to use scale colour is that they tend to give the illusion of opacity while they're still wet. What I mean by that is when you put down your first coat, it's going to look like a solid, even coverage. But as it dries, it becomes transparent. So when he says,
even the bright colours are very, very opaque.
That's completely false. They're transparent across the whole range and they get even more transparent the brighter the colour that you're using, especially the red and yellows.
And with them being, shall we call them gel based, a lot of people say gel based, they're a very thick pigment, the pigment's not thick but the medium's very thick, so you can, it's very easy to paint with them and not leave brush strokes, as in it's like moving a gel around, so I guess that's why people say they're gel based.
Again, this is not true. Because of the ultra matte finish combined with a high transparency, unless you have a lot of control, it's actually quite difficult not to leave visible brush strokes, and you'll see this in the next test that he does. So straight after he says,
it's very easy to paint with them and not leave brush strokes,
he starts to paint some sky blue over white, and as you can see, every single brush stroke is visible. And he's doing this test to show how well that the paint covers over white. Let me just play that again with the original commentary so you can see his thought process.
But the pigment is so strong in this paint, straight out the bottle, even adding 1-to-1 with water, you get some awesome coverage. And this is even over white with pale colours. So if you're worried about using Scale 75 for this reason, don't be, at all. I'm very, just on that alone, when I first got them out of this pot and did that with them, I was astounded at the quality of this paint.
Now, if you've used scale colour paints before, you'll be able to look at that coat the way it's been laid on and know immediately that when it dries, it's going to be a streaky mess. It's going to have a lot of transparency and you're going to be able to see all the brush strokes. And if we just fast forward the video to the next test, you'll be able to clearly see that. So yeah, this looks only partially dry to me, and already you can clearly see how transparent the paint is, and that was without thinning it down. You can see every brush stroke, and there's even a bit of artexing happening right here. Like I said, you can't really use them without thinning them, because that's the kind of result that you're going to get if you don't. If you did this on a model, you would need to apply another 4 coats at least to get it opaque, and you would ruin the model in the process because the paint would be way too thick and textured, and that's only going to be the base coat. You'd still have to put on your highlights and shadows on top of that. Now, the main reason that I decided to make this video was when he said the following.
So to wrap this up, guys, the questions that I've been asked, a lot of new painters have been saying, what do you think for scale 75 for a new painter? The answer is, if I were a complete novice, and when I first started out, I just used paints out at pot, maybe a bit of water if it was starting to dry a bit, I don't think you're going to have a problem.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
If anything, I think these will help you more as painters starting out.
What? No!
No!
No, no, no!
So this is where I have a massive problem with the video. I'm sorry, Luke, but I think that telling beginners to use scale colour paints is unbelievably bad advice. To then go further and say that scale paints will actually help them is just irresponsible. There's so many reasons that beginners should avoid using scale paint. I don't even know where to begin. You honestly need a certain level of experience with painting to be able to use them properly. Even just getting them mixed in the pot is going to be an issue. Beginners aren't going to realise just how long you have to shake them before they are usable, and they'll end up losing half the medium on the palette the first time they crack them open, thus ruining the pot. And they're not going to understand why the paint is acting weird because they'll have no relative experience with paint to know that it's not correctly mixed. And that's not even mentioning that the pots come sealed, so you have to actually use a drill to open the nozzle before you use them. Paint consistency is also way more of a factor than other brands, and that is something that beginners struggle with more than anything else. Then there's the transparent nature of the paint, and because of that you need to apply sometimes up to 6 or 7 coats in order to get a solid, smooth, opaque base layer. And that means that drying time becomes a really big issue. Beginners aren't really going to have the patience to be able to paint 6 coats of the same colour, and they're not going to understand how important it is to allow each layer to dry before applying the next one. So either they'll end up ripping the surface layer of paint and turn their model into something resembling a bowl of porridge, which can't be fixed without stripping it, or they'll stop short of full opacity and end up with a streaky base coat, which is going to have a knock-on effect for their highlight layers. And the worst part is they're not going to know why. And all of that is assuming that they've properly mixed the paint before squeezing it out of the pot in the first place. Most beginners just want to slap the paint on and maybe do a wash and some simple highlights. They want to see quick results because patience takes time to develop. But you simply can't do that with scale colour. It lends itself to a more slow and methodical approach. And that's why I like them, because that's the way that I paint. They're also not good on their own for certain things. For example, they're terrible for skin if you use them in isolation. You can use them in combination with other brands on skin to get a really good effect, but beginners aren't really going to realise that. I could go on, but I think you get the point. If you're a beginner watching this, please, for the love of God, don't start out with scale colour. There's way better lines that are more suited to new painters. Try some Games Workshop paints. Yes, they're expensive for what you get, but they have a really nice range of colours and they're easy to use. Or get a few Vallejo model colour pots. Or try Cote d'Arms or P3. Or if you want something more matte, try Reaper. They're all going to be a much better starting point than scale colour. Once you've been painting for a good few months, then maybe think about picking up a couple of pots of scale colour and experiment with them to see how you like them. Just don't start off with them or you might end up getting discouraged from painting altogether. Don't get me wrong though, they are good paints, they're just terrible for beginners. And don't think I'm bashing Luke here guys, I really like his channel, I just think he's way off the mark on this one. Go and have a look at his original video to get his whole take on it. I've only presented the parts of the video that I don't agree with. And just to clarify, I'm making this video because I think there's a lot of misinformation surrounding miniature painting, and I think as content creators we have a responsibility not to add to that. I know that a lot of new painters look to these channels on YouTube to get advice, and if we give them false information, that could lead to them wasting money, getting discouraged, or even leaving the hobby altogether, and that would be a massive shame, because I think it's a fantastic pastime to get into with a great community surrounding it. So what's your opinion on this? Am I talking talking crap? It certainly wouldn't be the first time. Shut at you. Would you recommend scale colour to beginners? Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Thanks again. Bye for now.